George, I'm curious to know about the overall vision for the company. So, because you have 6 company owned, right? And we've got 10 franchises coming. What's the thought on the strategy? Are we going to continue open company owned with franchises?
Yeah, my goal is to stay at least 20% franchisor,
Okay.
company owned locations, for multiple reasons. One, support is the most important thing. Keeping us opening corporate locations allows us to be able to, we say hire to the bench, but having that roster that we can go out and go to one of our GMs and say, hey, do you want to, break away from this restaurant and go open another location? And we say that to our GMs because we want our general managers to go out and see something new. And then we also want that GM to be able to turn around and look back at their restaurant and say, well, how did it do when I was gone for a week or 2 weeks, while opening other locations? And it also gives them, it takes the blinders off, because if they're doing it every day, it kind of opens their eyes to new markets, to seeing new things, to seeing different setups. And so opening company locations is very important to us.
Okay.
One, allows us to test new things in different markets that we'll be in. But two, is really the support to our franchisees.
Well, there's the 2 schools of thought on that. Some people believe I need to have both, and it's great to have one, cash flow of company owned. Secondly, maybe to use for seeding of other markets. And then the other school of thought is I could either only be a franchisor or only company owned. I can't do both. It's really difficult. So what do you say to those folks that say, man, George, I gotta be all in or all out?
Yeah, I would say be careful with that. I mean, I understand why some think that way, but I also think that you got to walk the talk. So, I know of multiple franchises that only had one location, and, they grew up and, they had problems with it, and there was lawsuits around it and all that. I like to be able to say to the franchisee, hey, I understand, because we've experienced this in this market, or we've experienced that in that market. I think you really, again, it goes back to the franchise support. If I only had one restaurant and I'm opening 20 locations, and there's only 12 months in the year, and they're overlapping when they're opening, where am I going to have that team? You can't just stockpile them in a restaurant.
Right.
Now I get to pull from all different locations, right? And what that allows us is we're certifying trainers, and then we know that we are protecting the brand, that we're doing the same thing in each and every restaurant, because now I'm empowering these people to be corporate trainers and to go open those things. And then if they're in certain markets, I can ask that GM, say, hey, listen, I want you to be a franchise rep today. Kind of spice up their life and their job, and say,
Right.
I want you to go tour this market for the next week and a half or 2 weeks. I mean, I did that when I was a GM, when I was 21 years old in Jackson, Mississippi. Dr. Nuka would send me out and say, look, this franchisee is struggling. He needs to learn how to make money. Go spend a week with him. And it was awesome. And it taught me so much. And I was very fortunate to have that. Now, I was also doing that because at the time we only had, I think we were opening our 5th location. So we were stretched in and we were traveling all over. But thank God we were young, and,
you can do it.
Had that flexibility, and
Yeah.
we were tall and bulletproof.
Yeah, totally. Well, I want to explore this further, because there are founders out there that they're excited about seeding markets with company-owned locations as a way of getting the exposure to start the franchise. Of course, at the same time, want to caution people that they shouldn't just open company-owned locations for the sake of, seeding markets only. That you have to have a really good mix. So I'm curious to know what your strategy is on placement of the company-owned locations. Is it specifically in markets where you hope to grow franchises around there, or is it certain regions that you want to continue to build company-owned? What makes a good company location?
Well, it's kind of funny, because when I opened these corporate locations, the mindset wasn't that because we're in Charleston, we're in Charlotte, North Carolina, we're in Boone, North Carolina, we're in Wilmington, North Carolina, and we're in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And they're like, well, why are you so spread out? And I'm like, well, I'm truly testing how easy our operations are, that we can have these guys, 5 hours away and still be able to deliver the quality that we were able to do here. But two was really, the first step was test of market, right? Figure out where we really thrive. But number two is, yes, now that I have the corporate locations, we'll build up corporate locations that will give support to Florida. We'll have the North Carolina be able to give, North Carolina and Virginia. I mean, we purposely did it in a college market because that's where I started. And so we wanted to be able to recruit some of the best, eager managers coming up who are going to be your next franchisees, And so I think, and I hope that this answers your question, is as we grow, I do know that there's some that will go, okay, we're going to open a corporate location out here, and then hopefully a franchisee will come and pick it up. We're having that very thing today where we're having a group in Charlotte who's coming. They wanted the whole Charlotte market. Mm-hmm. Well, that makes sense because we're able to grow together and build a brand, especially when you go in those big markets.
Right.
You really got to come in and open 2 or 3 at a time, and really get that brand out. We've really gone on the mindset of it's a very simple concept that's easy to execute. Mm-hmm. And you hire and empower the right people, you can do it extremely well. And we've really strategically, put our franchisees is really for that, the distribution side of it, and those concentric circles to really for the branding side of it.
Okay. What's the investment range for the franchise?
Anywhere from, $650,000 to $1.1 million.
Okay.
And those are because there are the corporate locations that we've built. That $1.1 million was really for delays of COVID. It took us 9 months to get a water heater. That was a lot of fun. We were paying dead rent, trying to get one open with delays of COVID and inspections. And, the hardest part 2 years ago was health departments, they were on a skeleton crew. They weren't going out and doing inspections, building apartments the same way. We experienced everything. And so now it's getting a little bit easier. Building permits are getting easier to obtain. So it's, we're seeing our costs come back down. We've really valued and engineered what we do inside the 4 walls, and really in the kitchen side of it. I grew up in manufacturing, so it's all return on investment. So when we look at a piece of equipment, we don't necessarily look at what it costs. We look at, well, how well is it going to last, and what's the return on investment? When is it going to pay itself off? I mean, we have a $7,000 machine that simply crushes oranges so we can have the freshest orange juice there possibly is. And people go, well, George, I think it's $7,000. I'm like, yeah, but it paid for itself in 6 months.
Right.
So that's how we kind of look at it.
Yeah. And what about leasing? How difficult is it right now for the franchisees? I mean, I heard you mention earlier about telling that one franchisee, look, just slow down. We'll have the right location. Might not be till 2025, but what are you seeing right now on leases? Are people?
It's tough. I think it's tough because, this is tough to say. I got to be careful how I say it.
Sure.
But, when the PPP came out, it really kept a lot of restaurants afloat that shouldn't have been afloat. Right.
Yeah.
And so it just dragged on the inevitable. Now we're starting to see that come about. And then really kind of, look, we're already in the recession in the restaurant industry. I don't care what anybody says. Well, I'm seeing it, especially in the nighttime white tablecloth restaurant industry is really tough. Mm-hmm. We're seeing it across the board. It's all over the news. And this really will test. I've already been through 3 of these. And so it really kind of weeds out the non-players. And this is a great time to grow franchising. And so we kind of look at it straight out as leasing. We say, be very patient. Don't try to rush it. We're not going to sit here and tell you, well, you got to have this open in 6 to 9 months. No, we've said to all of our franchisees is like, look, as long as we know that you are aggressively looking, but being very smart about it,
right,
and being methodical in what you're choosing, then by all means, we're not going to tell you you're out of time. We're going to be there for you. We get it. We understand. I used to be a franchisee. It was very difficult. I went through the high times and the low times. And as we're coming out of these low times, this is the best time to grow. And so, we're seeing the retail sector. So the cool thing about Vicious is we're actually doing a location in Mississippi on this. Is I told the realtors, like, don't go look for restaurants that are about to close. Go look at the retail locations, right? If you find a really good lifestyle center, those retail locations got killed during COVID. Mm-hmm. And the internet and Amazon and all that. I mean, you look at Best Buy. Best Buy is a showcase store now, right? You go in and look at the TV, and then you go online and order it from Best Buy and it's delivered to your house. So you don't have to throw that in your car anymore.
Right.
It's the same thing we're seeing with the retail side of it. The retail wants to downsize. But in other new markets, though, we're also running into issues that there was a real hold on development and where interest rates are right this moment. Mm-hmm. New locations are kind of hard to find because people aren't developing as much right this moment. And development became very difficult. You gotta be very careful in what you're doing, but really think outside the box and finding locations.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.